Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week I wanted to talk about the idea of being an exhibitionist, which is more of a silly title than anything else. This really comes from the book by Austin Kleon, and that's Kleon, called Show Your Work, where it's always talking about how your process works. And talking about your process is a really scary thing for a lot of artists, myself included, up until I kind of had the realization otherwise. Because you don't want to share your secrets. You don't want people to know what you're doing so they can do it and copy you and like push you out of the market. But the more you think about that, the less that actually makes sense. And I guess I'll talk about that a little bit first. So when somebody knows what you're doing, that doesn't necessarily mean they know how you're doing it. Because you have years upon years of experience that they don't. And it's important to understand that, because it's easy to know how to do something, but it's much different to actually have the ability and the skill to actually execute on that thing. So when I'm talking about showing your work, I'm talking about something like music streaming or creating blog posts based upon like how your game came together, like devlogs, or in-process shots of your paintings or your drawings for Instagram. It's all of that stuff that shows your art in the middle of production and kind of works to explain how something comes to be, rather than just presenting it as a finished piece, fully formed, without any struggle behind it. Because I think the struggle is really something that's worth talking about. As an artist, sometimes things get a little bit difficult, and it's important to share that process. It brings humanity not only to you, but to your art. And I think that that's really valuable. But the real big thing is if you start teaching people how to do the things that you do, you will find people who are interested in your work simply because they want to become better at their work. And I mean, I know I reference the 2-hour track challenge a lot, but it's one of the main reasons one of the main ways that I show my work. Where I show the music production process. And I'm not doing that just because I want to like advertise. I mean, obviously that's a small part of it, but I'm not doing that because I want to advertise. I'm doing that because I want to show how music is produced in my own way. Obviously I'm not everybody, but I'm able to sit down and I'm able to make a song and talk about the process of making that song, and people find that interesting. Granted, not millions of people, but if you've listened to any of the prior podcasts, you don't need millions of people to become sustainable as an artist. You need a few hundred or maybe 1,000. So really, you just need to gather people who are interested in you and interested in growing. And I feel that those people are generally more pleasant to be around anyway than some memester on YouTube who's just out there to get the clickbait and the views and all that other stuff, So it's really important to just think about your work not only as a finished product, but how can you expose it to the public through the process. And like I said, that might be something as simple as, doing a stream, but it could be postmortems. Postmortems are another really great way of doing this because it gives you the ability to finish the piece, but then also talk about the production process behind it. That way you're not splitting your attention. I also know that like streaming and some of this other stuff where I've heard people be like, I can't do that when I'm working. When I'm working, I'm focused. And that's perfectly understandable. I completely get that. So another way of doing this is doing postmortems, or just kind of putting a camera up and passively recording while you work, and then splitting it together and maybe editing something together for YouTube, or or just talking about it after the fact. And I think that that's perfectly acceptable too. It's mostly just about making sure that you talk about how the process is and what goes into the process, because again, it imbues the art and the artist, you, with a little bit more humanity. Because one of my favorite things about streaming is it allows people to watch me struggle sometimes. And it's a really weird thing to say, but on the internet, especially social media, people don't necessarily talk about the bad times, especially when it comes to creativity. And I think that it's really important to expose that a little bit more and let people know that it's okay if you're having problems, because everybody has problems. I mean, I've been writing music for 20 years, and I've been streaming for over 4, and I still have bad days, and that's just part of the process. And it's good to let people know that that's the part of the process, regardless of what skill level you're at. So I think that's all I have to say on this one. This is a really fun topic, and I've talked about this a lot on stream before. But I would highly recommend finding a copy of "Show Your Work" by Austin Kleon, and that's Kleon. It's a short read, but it's very fascinating. It talks more about this whole process. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being a supporter on Patreon. I really appreciate that. And I will talk to you in the next one. Be remarkable.